Now, we've learned about order blocks. Right, we've learned about order blocks, and as we've learned about order blocks, what we didn't really learn, or what some of us didn't really catch on order blocks, is how to really enter using an order block. And we said an order block is a last buy before you sell, or a last sell before you buy. So in this example that I'm going to pull out, I'm going to show you the example of an order block that is a bearish order block, meaning that you are going from a buy to a sell. Right. So assuming this is our 4-hour time frame, what we learned is when we get to actually see how our order block is like, or how to mark it, when we mark it like this, what do we do? The next thing we do is we wait for price to come back within where? Within that zone. Right. So let's see here. Um, let's say this is how our market structure will move. This was our order block, and we see that our trend maybe would go in a downtrend, and at some point it is to come and mitigate this order block. When it comes to mitigate this order block, the difficulties that you might actually end up finding out is you're in 4-hour, and for you to take an entry at this point, what are you going to see? You're going to see that it's going to drag you, right? Let's say the actual point of orders was here at this level, because at this point we don't really know. We just know that we're in a zone where orders were, right? And we're supposed to mitigate them. Let's say you're supposed to enter here. You don't know. You've only been told what? You've only been told that whenever you approach an order block, you have to immediately enter it as price gets into that OB, right? So what we do now is we go through a process called refinement. If this was a 4-hour candle, what you would actually see is in your H1, these will be 4 H1 candles, right? So let's say this is our H1 time frame now. Our OBs will be looking something like this. So let me reduce them in size. Or our candlesticks, I mean, they'll be looking something like this, right? They'll be looking something like this. What I'm gonna show here is not gonna be perfect, but I'm hoping we can all understand what I'm trying to do here. So this is going to be how our H1 is gonna look like. So instead of you entering at the bottom here, what you do is you go through a process called refinement, right? And in that H1, where is that OB that you can actually say this was my last buy before I sold? It's here, right? Sorry, it's here, right? Meaning that instead of your orders being at the bottom, what you're gonna see is they're gonna be here, right? So what we have avoided is we've avoided you to get an early entry, which is gonna damage your equity or your account, right? What we now want is we want that perfect entry that we can say this is a sniper entry, and there is little or no play when price hits that OB. So now what you're gonna see is price is going to come and then tap on your actual OB and then fall. Now, instead for price, remember our first zone was like this. Our first zone was like this, right? So instead for you to enter your trade at this area over here, what you are going to see is you're going to have more of a refined entry and hit it right on spot. Right. Now, you've gotten into your trade. What exactly are you looking for? What exactly do you want when you've gotten in that trade? let's talk about before. Okay. Before you get in that trade, your H4 is always going to look like this. It's going to be a straight line, right? It's going to be straight line and then it goes down. But what you want to do is you want to go in smaller time frames. Let's say M15, you want to see your market structure come. You want to see that perfect change of character, break of structure, and then it falls. Right. So I'm going to put it in red. And then red now is going to show my small time frame. Black is going just to show my bigger time frames, which I've taken my analysis from. Right. Where is your stop loss going to be? Always, guys, remember what I have been telling you. If you are trading with an order block, the stop loss is always just above the OB candle, right? Or if we have it, or if we have a tail like this over here, sorry, if we have a tail over here, let's say like this, your stop loss just has to come tap on the tail, and this is where your stop loss is gonna be. Right. So your H4 at the end of the day, what your H4 was looking like in the first place was it was just looking like this whole big candle, right? This whole big candle that we see here. And then at the end of the day, if you refine it, what you end up seeing is 4 candlesticks. Now, some people are a bit mechanical. What they will do is they will go as low as M15. And sometimes instead of finding that your entry was there, it will shift up to be a bit low here and it will be a perfect sniper entry, which I'll show you on the actual charts. So let's find an area where we have an OB. This is our order block, right? I think we can all see it. This is our OB over here. Our last buy before we sold. Actually, let me mark it so that we can all see it. Here, the green one. And I know some people don't really understand unless if we mark it perfectly onto them. So this was our OB. I want you to see something. We've marked this whole range of our OB. But when price came, if we had entered here, it means it would have dragged us all the way up and then fell. What I mean is it would have dragged us all the way up and then fell, right? So now we want to refine it and I want to show you something. So from our 24-hour time frame, which is our daily time frame, what we now do is we go to our H4 time frame. And when we go to our H4 time frame, what you actually see is where was that last buy before we sold? Okay, I wanted to mark 2 candles for you, but I figured out some people might be a bit confused, but let me do that. This is our last buy before we sold, right? But this last buy before we sold, for me, it is not of much interest. Why? Because it didn't do anything. I would rather come and choose this last buy before we sold, which is over here, right? And let me mark it with my horizontal rays, which is over here, right? Or I'll push it just a bit to this one over here. Why? Because it is responsible for the break of structure over here, right? I think we can all see it. It is responsible for this break. This one is not responsible for anything. So it's not as powerful as this one here. What you can see is we have an OB. And what's the next thing? A break. So that's the one that I'm going to choose. That's the one that I'm really interested in. Although I have to keep in mind that this one is also there. Right. Now, I want you to learn something from yesterday's lesson. When we get a high, our first consolidation before we fall, we call that a supply. Right. So some people might now be confused. Is this an order block or is this a supply? This is a supply area. There's an order block in that supply area. You understand? So I want you to see something. Um, Before I refine this 4 hour to 1 hour and M15, I want you to see something when price came to that point. What did price do? Price came, it never hit our OB that was in our H4, the one that was at the top, right? But rather it came and played on the OB that was in our H4, the one that was responsible for the break-off structure, right? So I want to teach someone how to catch sniper entries, and today you shall learn. Right. With time frames like our H2. These time frames, a lot of people you ignore them, but these time frames they are very important. H2 is important, guys. Yes, H4 is, but H2 as well, it's important, right? So before this break, before if you are a trend line trader, I want you to look at something. Before this break over here, before this break, before this break over here, which one was our last buy before we sold? It is not this one. Why? Because this one comes after the break, but it is this one over here. This is our last buy before we sold in our H2. So what do we do? Instead of entering that trade early, we refine that gap. We go and mark that exact order block. Now, I want you to do something. Let's go to our H2. Let's go to where it reacted now. At least we have a point that we can reference at. What do you see? Instead of us entering around this level, right? What we have now shifted our entry a bit upward so that it becomes a bit of more precise, right? So now that we've marked it in our H2, we want to go to our H1. I usually like jumping straight into M30 or M15, but for the purposes of learning, let's go. Right. Now, what do you see in our H1? Let's use that point as our reference where we are marking our OB. What you see is we have now, instead of entering at this level in our H2, our H1 is now giving us a more refined entry up to around this area, which you can see over there. Right. So I don't think there's any need for us to move to the left. We'll go there when we shift to M15 or M30. Now let's go to M30. I'm not sure if our charts are gonna allow us to go to M30 or M15 because sometimes it fails to load when we go to very smaller time frames. But let's do that for the purpose and sake of learning. Now what you see is let's go to the left. Let's go to the left. Let's go to the left. I want you to see something. Come on. Now that chart is not showing price, is it? There's nothing here, is it? Okay, no. We have to move here. I want to see something. Okay, our charts have stopped loading here. So let's go to M30 actually. I know someone is smiling and like, why didn't I know this? So let's go to M30. Let's go to the left again. Let's see if it's gonna load. Let's see if our M30 is gonna load. Oh, it's not loading. So it's only allowing me to 1 hour. But let's play with that 1 hour. It's fine. So let's switch to that 1 hour. So what you see is now my H1 is loading, but well, it's fine. So what you see is we now have a more refined entry in our H1, right? But if we were, or if our chart is it allowed us to go into our M15, what you'd see is our entry would be somewhere here. Right, with our entry being somewhere there, wouldn't you say this was a sniper entry if you came back in the future? Right. You gave it no time to play, just this little play, and then it fell. Right. If we now go to our H4, or let's start with our day D1 chart, our order block, if you still remember, if we had used the D1 chart, it was supposed, our entry was supposed to be here. Our entry was supposed to be here. I think we can all agree with the way that we marked it. So imagine you get into an entry here, you don't know how to refine an order block, you don't know how to refine an entry, and then it carries you along, 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 and then it decides to fall here. But where is your entry? Your entry is here. You would have blown. No lie, you would have blown. Right. And even if you still used your H4, right, let's go to our H4. Where was your entry in that H4? Let's look for it. Your entry was supposed to be in your H4, your entry was supposed to be somewhere here. And let's say you had entered here, it would have dragged you, right? Dragged you and then fell. For us, for people like me, I would have blown. Why? Because I put bigger loads at most. Right. So that's how you refine your entries. Now let's go to another pair and then we get over and done with order blocks and then we move to gaps because we have so much to recap and learn at the same time. So now let's choose another pair. Let's say I always do in our sessions, if you've noticed, I always do one volatility pair, one currency pair, and then we move. So let's say we've chosen OGSD. Right, where is our order block that we can say let's use? We had structure over here, a low, a high, a low, a high, and a break, right? So before we got that break, this is our 4-hour chart. What I want you to see is we have an order block over here. And what we can do is we can mark that last buy before we sold. Right. If we mark it and we go to our H1, right, what would you see? You'd see that we have refined that entry into this OB over here. Right. Now, from that H1 and we move to our M15, let's go to the left. You see how it reacted to that. Right. Now let's go to the left and let's choose our M15. I want you to see something. When we choose that M15, where is your precise entry now? Here, right? Let's fine tune it. Let's fine tune it. Right. This OB here, this last buy before we sold was not responsible for break of this structure. Rather, it's this OB here that was responsible for break of that structure where price came from. So let's see if we had a sniper entry. Right. Did we or we didn't have? You see, sniper, no time to play. Was your stop loss hit? Your stop loss is above here. No, it was not hit. This is an M15 entry, a perfect one, a very, 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 very perfect one. One that will make you think, ah, how did these guys do it? Why did they enter at the tip of the tail? It's because you now have an order block that has been refined. Right, I want you to look at something. I think I can reference this. This is an OB over here. This is an order block over here that we see. This order block that I've just marked is responsible for the break of this law, thus responsible for the break of this structure. And when price came back to that OB, what do you see? You see that it came and just wigged on it. Nothing much. It just wigged on it and then it fell. Let me show you. It just wigged on it over here and then it fell. Now let's go and try to put it in another time frame. Let's say we've gone to 1 hour. We want to focus on that point. If you go to 1 hour, what you'd see was your actual order block, which broke the structure, was this whole part over here. Right. And it would have taken you a lot, right? But just by refining, what you can see is it's here. Simple as that. As simple as that. If anyone has a question before I move on to the next um topic, kindly raise your hand. Okay, Ryan, I've asked you to unmute.
Um, Good evening.
Evening, how are you?
I'm good. Um, I wanted to ask, does it matter how old an order block is?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't matter. Even if price runs away from that order block for months, when it comes back to that point, it still has to come and react. Remember, we are the only ones, retail traders are the only ones that trade on an hourly basis, on a daily basis, right? But there's people that hold for months, for years, and then they check after some time. So if you look at things from their own point of view, that means they're also basing on those areas. It doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter.
Okay,
Some people would have put orders that are worth billions on those positions, so they still have to come back to those positions and then mitigate from them.
okay. So if I have an order block at an old high point, and then as price moves down, I get a new lower high, right?
Yes.
And then price goes down again and creates another low. And then after I use the strategy of using my Fibonacci, and wait for price to come back in my 50 to 71%, is there a chance price can break through that zone even after I've had my change of character and break of structure, while price is trying to mitigate the old order block, uh, breaking my eye?
Price will always move fairly. So there are no circumstances where price will just vigorously move from any point and say, I'm targeting this order block. It's always structure that comes into play. Price moves with structure. Unless maybe if the market crashes and then you just do this one straight candle that goes to that OP.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Okay. So I'll give my last example here, pertaining order blocks and refinement. We have an order block that we have over here. Uh, of course, this is a last buy before we sold. But what did this last buy before we sold really do in this time frame? Nothing. But this one at the bottom here, what you can see is it is the one that is responsible for break of this structure over here, for this break of structure over here. So what does price do? Price has to come react in that and then continue. And what did you see? It did the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm,
So this is an odd OB. This is odd as well. Although it's fresher than this one, but it now depends on what did that OB do? what did it contribute to the market? Is it just existing, or there's a reason it's existing? Right. So if we go to H1, let's go to H1. If we go to let's go to M15 actually. I want you to see something. Instead of us taking entries at this area over here, right? If we come and we refine our OB, what we actually see is our OB is gonna look like this. Sorry, our OB is gonna be this last buy before we sold over here, right? So you just look at this entry over here. You see how accurate this entry is. It just came and
Yes.
went, and then it fell.
Yeah, I can see.
Right. So I want you to do this again. Now we want to go to M1. Ladies and gents, I want you to look at this. This is an OB that we have over here. And if we had moved to M5 to refine this OB, what would you see? You'd see that our last buy before we sold in that M5 was here. Just look at this end. Or let's go to M1 now. I've never taught you the 1 minute strategy for some reason, but it would have been nice. So let's go to M1. I want you to see something in our M1. Where is the last buy before we sold that broke structure in our M1? It is here. It is here. I think we can all agree. Now, if we were to take an entry from our M1, you see how accurate that is.
Hmm.
Eish, I love
Nice,
foreign.
but
So, if you refine your entries, you always get sniper entries. If you refine your order blocks, you always get sniper entries. Almost always. Now, what you just have to know is which order block to take. So let's say what I've been teaching you. Hey, I'm seeing us having another lesson. Yes. Anyways, it's fine. So let's say from what I've taught you before, I said if you want to look for a valid order block, you take your fib, you touch your high, you touch your low. Anything that exists below the 0.618%, we ignore it, it's noise. And anything that exists above the 0.618% is gold. So what you see is just by having that order block in our perfect area, it sold. And by refining it, we managed to get a sniper entry just like that. If there's anyone who's not understanding, guys, please ask me. We have like 3 minutes remaining. I think this is not our last session together. If there's anyone with a question, kindly ask me. Okay, um, Emmanuel, you can ask. Emmanuel Slampilo. I've asked you to unmute. You can ask.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly.
Okay, good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm okay, how are you? So I just wanted you to repeat that part of using the order block. And also another thing, uh, what about the overall trend direction?
All right.
Do we also include it on that issue of using the order block there?
Yes, we include it if you check on the last part that I gave about the fib. I was actually using the overall market direction, meaning that
Okay.
I was considering that we are already in a downtrending trend. So what you'd see
Okay.
was we are looking for order blocks that sell more than order blocks that buy.
That
So
buy. Okay.
yeah, so if we want to check if we have an order block that is valid in the sell direction. I don't know if you've attended our sessions before, which we're focusing on the fib. We said
On the free pick.
we said you touch the high to the low, flowing with the direction, and
Yes.
anything that is above the 0.618%, we take it. Anything that's below the 0.618%, we don't take it. Even you see, we've ignored all these order blocks here. This was an order block. This was an order block here. Right. So we've ignored them. Why? Because we are keeping in mind that we are in a bearish trend. So we have to look for order blocks that go bearish. We are not just taking any order blocks. And again, we did a lesson about premium and discount levels, where if we are selling, we want to sell in the premium. And if we are buying, we want to buy in the discount.
Okay. Okay. Answered.
All right.
Okay.
That being said, I doubt this is our last session. I think I'll have to make time. I'll have to tell you maybe in